Anyway, so here's Dion Wiggins. I think after 2 days, he doesn't need much introduction. We're very happy to have him here. He's kind of a wizard of MT, I think, and a wizard of slides as well, because he has the most amazing presentations, the most amazing ideas, and I think it's great to have him here because I'm sure he'll help us to survive the last hour. And I hand over to Dion without further ado and give him the microphone that works. So.
Okay, good afternoon everyone. Thanks for sticking out to the end. I know it's tough sometimes. I'm going to conduct a social experiment, seen as the theme's based around social. I've got quite a few interesting, perhaps controversial viewpoints and statements I'm going to put out. The social experiment is how many get quoted out of context on Twitter. Let's see how this goes. So yesterday I put this slide up with something very similar. Every day 15 petabytes of new information is generated. That's in raw text. That's about the equivalent of 20 million 4-drawer filing cabinets full of text. It's a lot of data. That's 5 times more data than we had in 2008 in a day. Okay, and that's growing by a factor of 20 by 2020. Now, breaking down one of the points I made yesterday, Common Sense Advisory's number for 2011 is $31.4 billion of revenue from LSPs. If you divide that by 365 days and 10 cents a word, that means LSPs translate 0.0000067% of all new content created every day. It's a tiny, tiny drop in the bucket. Now, you can argue, well, perhaps most of that content shouldn't be translated. How much, perhaps? Well, let's say 99% shouldn't be translated. All that means is you drop 2 zeros. Now, I hear people saying, oh, I'm worried that MT is going to put me out of business. What does it mean for translators? It means more work than you've ever had before. It's as simple as that. The content is growing so quickly, humans cannot keep up, and there is no way to keep up, ever. Okay, that's the bottom line. So this is an opportunity to grow and expand your reach, not to be afraid. Here's another graph that scares the hell out of me. 90% of all content that exists today was created in the last 2 years. That's a huge volume of content. Now put that in context of what I just said, that's going to grow by a factor of 20 by 2020. Right? There's more work than humans will ever handle. The question is, how do we get that in another language? How do we get it translated, either by machine or by human? So we're focused very much today as LSPs in the top portion of this pyramid. And even some of those can't be cost justified in some languages. Most of the information is actually going to be created in the bottom portion of this pyramid. Right? That's where the biggest growth is going to be. And that's where LSPs need to find ways to break into this. Now, this can only be done if you're a tech-savvy LSP, to be frank. If you're just following traditional human steps, TEP and out the other side, forget it. So one of the things I expect to see over the coming years, or two of the things I should say, is either LSPs being acquired by system integrators, or LSPs acquiring system integrators to become tech-savvy. So this is about becoming technology enabled. Okay, another statement I put up yesterday. Google translates more in one day than all human translators translate in 1 year. Right, now it might be good or it might be terrible, whatever you're using it for, that's up to you. But it shows that there's a purpose. And that some people find Google Translate very useful. Some content is machine or nothing. But that doesn't mean it's bad. We translated 13 million historical patents for LexisNexis, from Japanese to English. We were doing 500 million words a day, every day. That's just in Japanese, and we do similar in Chinese, Korean, German, and others. Okay, if you were to put one human on, that's 152,000 years to translate, and it would have cost about $40 billion. And that's just to translate the old stuff, let alone the new stuff coming through every week. Now, the interesting thing here is, while the grammar wasn't as good as human translation, certainly, the terminology was twice as accurate as human translators. Now, what does that mean? In the case of LexisNexis, it meant that these were discoverable. In fact, the machine translations were more discoverable by the search engine than the human translations, because the terminology was more accurate. The next step was, okay, I found the patent that I was interested in, now I'd like to get it translated or proofread by a professional. Brand new work for human translators that would have never been there before. Now, we're living in an interesting situation. Translators are worried that MT is going to put them out of work. LSPs are worried, where am I going to get translators from? We've got fewer translators than 10 years ago. And that supply is shrinking. Prices are being pushed down. People are starting to say, well, you know what, your rates are getting so low, I think I'll go to another industry. Right? Many other reasons that translator supply is decreasing. Right? You know, translators work at 2,000 to 3,000 words a day. To scale that is very difficult. It's another human to scale. In many industries like medical, it's very hard to find qualified, good translators. So one of the solutions that people are doing is they're using the same resources, but they're doing MT plus editing to fill in the gaps. And they're converting some of these translators across. But there's something interesting that's happening. There's a wave of new LSPs coming from very low-cost markets. Could be China, India, part of South America, and so on. Now, many of these LSPs, to be frank, are terrible. They don't have experience, but they see an opportunity. They see the demand. They hire low-cost resources. They don't care too much about process or quality, but there's plenty of so-called victims out there that buy on price. And it's putting long-term LSPs out of a job in some areas. They're winning on price. Now, as the enterprises mature, and many are getting more mature in this decision, they start to realize this and they go back to a more mature LSP. Or they go to a more mature LSP for the first time, in some cases, where they started off with a low-cost one, thinking translation's easy. Right? So, for the next couple of years, expect to see that wave of low-cost, not necessarily high-quality content being produced through lower-cost markets. That doesn't mean the higher-end LSPs are going to do any worse. There's plenty of work. But there is going to be a wave of lower-quality content, driven by sheer demand. Translation speed gets interesting. So a typical human's 2,000 to 3,000 words a day. Typical MT, at least with our technology, we're now getting between 6,000 to 15,000 words a day per translator. Our fastest customer is doing 23,000 words a day. Now, there's a technique that's starting to get a lot of traction. I've mentioned this over a few years, called Monolingual Translation. It doesn't work in every language, but I encourage LSPs to start investigating it. The concept's very simple. Take raw MT in a domain where the translation is not critical, i.e. you wouldn't want to use this for medical where somebody dies if you get it wrong. But let's say hotel reviews. If the English said the bed was dusty and the machine came out with the bed was dirty, and somebody post-edited that only looked at the target language, so monolingual translation, do you really care that it said dusty versus dirty if the message was conveyed? Right, certain domains you can do that. There's a lot of innovation coming from outside of the translation industry. My company's one example. I'm not from an NLP or a translation background. I'm from a programming and research background in business and IT and handling big data. Nothing to do with the language industry. But I saw an interesting problem and I found a solution. Some of the upstarts fascinate me. One company in Japan realized that people are spending 3 hours each way going to work every day. So they made a post-editing tool for MT that they can work on their phones. As they travel, as they sit or stand on the train, they're certainly not as productive as they would be on a desktop, but it's no longer dead time. They're making money. And they're making quite a bit of money. They're using that time. I've seen some LSPs that work on rapid turnaround, very quick ad hoc translations. And this area is very interesting to me too. Okay? And there's a new market focus from niche LSPs on these quick turnaround jobs of 1 to 10 pages. Right? There's going to be a lot of interesting innovation in that area. Here's where it starts to get interesting. The translation buyers are getting smarter. Now, they're pushing on margin, certainly, but they're also pushing on process, quality, many other things. LSPs need to work with that and understand that, getting the smarter buyers. Now, unfortunately, some of them are working on the wrong information too. It's MT, so it must be terrible is one. It's MT, give me a discount is another. Right? Just because it's MT doesn't mean it should be any cheaper. If you as an LSP have invested in MT and spent a lot of money, and you're getting the benefit of that, and you're delivering a service that meets their quality level, doesn't mean that they necessarily should get a discount. So some of the smarter LSPs that aren't selling MT, but they're using MT, don't even tell their customers. It's just another tool in their tool chest. It helps them increase their margin. And I was sitting in MemoQ Fest a few months ago. One of my customers was talking on the phone, and I heard him say, well, what if I drop the price 30%? Will you toss the other winner out? And he got a project he had lost that he wasn't going to use MT on, and flipped it around, dropped the cost 30%, and still doubled his profit margins. So using MT to win deals that you wouldn't have otherwise got. But again, that pushes the price down for LSPs that aren't using MT. Quality has to be understood. Quality is a factor of purpose. It's all about what you're using it for. So LexisNexis, quality was about having right terminology, not necessarily right grammar. Other cases, magazine publications, you're looking at the other end. Having MT that's not designed to give you an understanding, but MT that's designed to allow you to publish to a specific target audience is going to be essential. We're getting some systems now that are ranging between 50 and 86% of raw MT output with human review requiring no editing at all. And that's where things need to be for an LSP. Getting to that level of quality can only be done by understanding data, understanding the target audience and focusing on that. There's still a lot of confusion about why is commercial MT that is customized or hybrid or open or generic different to the others. Most people still outside of the community, and even some in it, look at it and say it's MT, one big umbrella. They don't differentiate. Right? You know, things like if you compare hybrid MT, Azure Online's model is pre-processing to guide statistics, sometimes using syntax, sometimes using example-based, sometimes using TM portions, guiding the statistics, and then post-processing to normalize and other things, versus translation rules-based like Systran, and then using statistical smoothing. Both are called hybrid. And so getting people to understand the differences. It's a confusing term for many. Then we get Moses. Now I might upset a few people here. This will be interesting. Moses is an awesome platform. But like any MT, there's hype that is incorrect, some positive, some negative. Okay, there's raw Moses. There's things like Moses in a box, where companies have come along and said, right, here's an installer to make it easy for you to install Moses. There's Moses as a service, like ALS, putting a pretty wrapper around it, but it's still Moses, pretty much. Okay? Or there's LSPs that are picking up Moses and dropping it in and starting to use that. But some LSPs, unfortunately, are using it in a very poor way. They're using it as a me too. Oh, we do MT, and they're using it to get post-editing and other work. right? As opposed to actually using it as a tool to make money, to increase margins, and to increase profit. Right? The hype is what starts to get me worried. This was on the Taos website on a research article. The very same technology used by Google Translate and Bing Translator. They're talking about Moses being the same thing that Google and Bing uses. It's not. So you've got to take a lot of the content and the context and understand it properly. If you're going to be using Moses as an LSP, use it, get the right people. You do need expert programmers because it's only the SMT portion. There are many other things that need to be added. You need data. One of the case studies here is a very good one that shows Logorus, quite a mature LSP from Russia, and their experiments using Taos data. 360 man-hours even to set up their first pilot. And that's not unusual. So open source doesn't equal free. There's a lot of things going on there. Then we get this problem. LSPs and other MT providers, and there's a lot more of these popping up, that have just upload your data and you'll have a wonderful MT system. That's not the case. You need to understand the data. If it was really this easy, don't you think everybody would be doing this? Okay? The research community here knows how difficult it can be to get just a fraction of a blue point increase. It's not about just uploading the data. Right? So Moses is a very sound piece of technology. The research community is doing a great job evolving this. It's growing tremendously. But there's a couple of ways to look at this. There's with the self-server stuff where people are promising too much. Upload your data and it'll be groovy. It's like buying a custom suit. Here's two guys wearing custom suits. Right? Which one do you want? The one that's tailored to fit or the one that's groovy? That's really what it comes down to. Finally, the reality check. Take McDonald's advertising. This was actually the best angle I could find on the burger, by the way. It's still not that attractive. Okay? And the nice thing is it doesn't even fit in the box when you put it in the real world. Their ad burger doesn't fit in the paper box that they send it with. Right? So get under the hood. If you're going to do Moses, I encourage you, try it. I'm not putting you off it. But understand what you're getting into. Not just take the pretty picture. Now, this is something I really have an issue with. One of the most common questions and misunderstood. What's your blue score? It's probably the single most irrelevant question relating to translation quality. And yet it's one of the most frequent. ALS this morning was a great example. They had blue scores of 91. I'm sorry, but humans get 65 to 70 typically. If you're getting a 91, you've got your test data in your training data. Yeah. Right? Simple as that. Right? If it's not measured properly, and if it's not measured apple for apple, my test set on each engine across the board, one test set could do fantastically, one could do terribly. There's so many variables there. And I've got a whole 1 hour presentation I do on how to measure properly. Right, so a couple of flags just to make you aware of things. When companies say, oh, we get this blue score, understand everything they're putting forward, but there's big red flags if anyone's over 75. There's another one that people say, I got 99% or 92%. What the heck is percent of accuracy? But people say that on a regular basis. Right? Accuracy according to who and what? Okay? The primary causes for these false reports are things like training data in the test set, improvements that were focused specifically on the test set, and a whole bunch of other things. People need to get past this and do real tests. Not, because the moment you pick up a real set of data and run it through, that 91 plummets to 20. Right? Because if your tuning data was also in the test set, oh sorry, the training data, then everything's wrong. And I'm pretty sure if the test data was in, the tuning data was also in. Also companies, they measure on 50 segments and say, look at my blue score. At least 1,000 segments as a minimum. Okay. What's missing when it comes to LSPs is LSPs don't know what data to upload into an MT system to make it good. They don't know what data is missing. They don't even know what the base data was, because most of the systems don't tell them. They don't know how to prepare the data. They don't know how to clean it. So a one-click where you upload your data and it magically knows that this isn't regular automotive, this is technical automotive for service engineers. But the TM didn't quite fit, it was marketing for automotive. How does it know that? You wouldn't expect a human to know that without telling them, but somehow people expect machines to know that when you simply upload data and you have a great system. I won't go through all of these things, but these slides will be available afterwards, so I'm happy to share. There's things like technology knowledge, linguistic knowledge. If you change something, add more data, what impact is that going to have on your system? Why would anyone expect an average LSP to understand that? I would say a good 50% of the LSPs that come to my company for MT don't even have a translation management system yet. Many of them don't even have TMs. They're just editing Word documents and things like that. So expecting them to know this knowledge that people are doing 4-year PhDs on and still only get a slice of it is crazy. Now, hybrid's interesting. By 2015, there's going to be no such thing as hybrid. Hybrid will be gone. It's just going to be MT. Right? It's that simple. I mean, our system's already doing syntax, rule, and statistics together. Right? Where appropriate, we're applying all of them. Right? That's all going to go through the mint, so come out the other side as MT. Now, quality. There's no way to get quality unless you understand the data. Just uploading data and hoping for a system, it's not going to work. It's like going through a multiple choice test, doing everything as A, and hoping it's right. Some of them will be there, some won't. There's no exception to this rule. If you don't understand the data, you will not get a high quality system. So I've talked a very long time about dirty and clean data, and a lot of the industry is moving now a lot more towards the clean data model, which is very good. But many still don't understand what clean and dirty data is. If I look at Pangeanic or ALS and others, their definition of clean data is removing formatting tags and things like that. That is not clean data. Clean data is very precise data, tuned and selected in the domain of what I'm doing. Okay? It also removes all the bad stuff like this. My favorite bad translation, the deformed person toilet. Right? It's not just about that. It's things like mixed language. I went to go to the market today, but it started raining. C'est la vie. I don't want that in my training data. We had one customer send us TMX files for training that they had Google translated and thought we should learn off that. Right? I kid you not. Mixed encodings, missing diacritics, even high quality stuff that's in the wrong domain is dirty data. Let me give you an example of how this works. This is Google, okay? I went to the bank. Google gets it right. Bank as in bank in finance. If you look down, okay, I went to the bank of the turn in my car. Google got river. Okay? I banked my plane into a dive. Google deposited it into a dive. But you can see most of these are focused on finance. Google involuntarily is doing the finance domain because there is more finance data on the internet that it's crawled than any other content. So it's actually more focused as a finance engine than one doing airplanes or driving or swimming and things like that. But that's the whole point about focusing on domain. If you focus on a domain, you get the right terminology. The nice thing with clean data is you need just a tiny fraction of the output post-edited to get significant improvements. We're seeing as much as, for every 10,000 segments you edit, a 1 blue point increase. Now that's significant when researchers are here focusing on algorithms that do 0.1 or 0.2 or 0.5, where somebody could edit 10,000 segments and get a 1 blue point increase. The data has to be real, it has to be current, and it has to be understood. This is one of my favourite slides. If you look at rock concert evolution for understanding how something's current, in the 60s it was all, right? Then we got a bit angrier in the 80s. Then things got really angry in the 90s. 2012 we take photos and put them on Facebook. Right, that's how we show we're angry or we're emotional or we're at a rock concert. Things have changed. Sorry, I'm almost up on my time. Okay, one of the things that people forget to do with MT is treat it like a human project. Here's a very high-level summary of a human project. If you're doing raw MT, it's the same, but you put customize in there. If you're doing MT plus human, again, what people keep forgetting is let's just upload our TM and off we go. You know, uploading a glossary actually puts a negative in. You're much better only using a glossary to fix broken translations and fixing something after translation to normalize it. If you want the word methanol and everything's coming through as formaldehyde, that means that's statistically the best word. Leave it alone until after it's translated and normalize it afterwards. Right? Don't break the statistical model by forcing a single word and then breaking all the n-gram patterns. Right. Now what's really needed is this example down here. Here's Spanish, and here's the same sentence in a business version and a children's version. That's raw MT from two of our systems. Okay, understanding the target audience means you need less editing in order to publish. And that's critical. If I'm writing the next version of Harry Potter and I get the blue version, I'm screwed. I might as well retranslate even though it's a perfect sentence from zero. Now, not all MT engines are equal. I saw a couple of research projects, and I've seen many examples where people say, how good is MT, or how useful is MT, and things like that. Which MT? You know, every engine is different. You know, best practices for post-editing MT. Which MT? What you do to make our engine better is different to what you do to Systran, to Google, to Bing, to Raw Moses. Everyone is different. But we work with a goal of getting to the level of an 85% fuzzy match equivalent when you're post-editing in terms of productivity. And what you should see over time is cost drop and effort drop. And I see a lot of people focusing on how do I pay my editors. Let me give you one of the simplest methodologies. Periodically get a trusted translator to work for 2 hours and calculate how many words he did. Don't count the number of errors, that doesn't work. Because I could spend 20 minutes resolving one bad term, or I could spend a fraction of a second fixing the equivalent word movement. Productivity is what matters. Use that trusted translator periodically to recalibrate your metrics and pay according to that scale. Match it to your fuzzy match. Invest in post-editing, train your people, and find the right people. Don't force a translator to be a post-editor. If they don't like it, there's plenty of translation work. That's not going away, but there's plenty that'll pick up the post-editing space as well. Last couple of slides. If you don't take anything away from this presentation, please take the message from this slide. For an LSP, there is only 2 metrics that matter. All the others are useful. The only 2 metrics are time, which is productivity, and margin, which is profit. Anything else is an indicator. Okay? You can also look at other things from the business perspective, like consistency. How many deals that you got because of MT? Right? Or how many deals can you do now that you couldn't do before because of MT? Those kinds of things. These are all great metrics down here, but they're all indicators. Even when you do the human metrics, they're all indicators. Now, many are worried that automation tools, not just MT, but the whole automation workflow, is going to put translators out of work. I can tell you now that's not going to happen. What is going to happen is people who use automation tools are going to put people who do not use automation tools out of work. There's a very big difference. There'll be more work than ever before, but the roles will change. They have to change to even make a small dent in the new content that's moving forward. Now, this is one of my customers, and they used to have Languageweaver. They replaced Languageweaver with Asia Online a little while ago, and they had some pretty interesting results. They measured the output, and I know this is very small, but what they found was through the process, our very first engine, our engine is in the red here, Languageweaver was in the orange. You can see the difference. Now, they found 32% faster, 5.3 times fewer errors. But the human translators, the editors, said it's all the same. We couldn't tell any difference. So don't always trust the human feedback. Okay? Listen to what the real metrics are telling you as well. Human feedback is important, but the real metrics are also important. They also had a customer ring up and say, "What's happened? Have you changed translators?" And I thought that was fascinating. And Monolingual was a little bit worried, and then the customer said, "Well, the reason we're asking is the translations are more consistent and the terminology is more accurate." So MT plus human using our platform in this case gave a higher quality result than human only, because humans work and they all have their own different preferences, their different writing styles. So that was quite a big change. Okay, wrapping up. This is one of my favourite quotes. Buckminster Fuller. "We're all called to be architects of the future, not its victims. Don't fight forces, use them." There are ways to use technology to your advantage. MT and automation as a whole is not going to put people out of work. It's going to create work. And the sooner the translator community starts to realise that if you want to stay as a translator, there's going to be more work than ever. And if you want to move on to the next stage, being a post-editor or perhaps integration, there's plenty of work there too. But for an LSP, if you're not moving towards technology and automation, then there's not going to be a rosy future too far down the road. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dion. Any questions?
I have a question.
Good. Question?
Thank you, Dion, for the presentation. One of the features of the MT engine you provided was working in different styles, and you mentioned translating Harry Potter. Are you thinking or even using MT for works of fiction? Or do you think it will be used at some point?
If it's customized in that domain, absolutely. And we've done a couple of books as experiments with some clients, and it's been quite successful. Every domain has its challenges, and some domains seem simple, and some actually seem more complex. But often it's actually the other way around. Like if you look at technical automotive, you think, or medical, you think they're very difficult domains. But actually travel is far more difficult for MT than something like that, because there's so many different named entities, locations, tourist attractions, people, cities, hotels, bars, restaurants, that you have to get right than a very narrow scope in medical comparatively. So doing something like a novel, yes, it can be done. It's interesting, we translated a few novels into Thai, into Chinese. Recently we did around 100,000 song lyrics from English into Chinese. So while not exactly the same, it's similar sort of differences. Song lyrics are tough, right? But the editors found that they got a huge boost in productivity. And what was interesting is the slang, like I was singing and swaying and dancing, with all the G's missing, right, really helped come through because they were struggling with a lot of the slang. Whereas the MT, once it had had it solved once, was putting the right slang in for them, even if the grammar had a few issues here and there. So it helped them a lot on terminology and sped them up. You wouldn't publish it raw, but as an accelerator, absolutely.
Where do you find parallel corpora that contains slang?
You don't have to have parallel corpora. That's one of the big sort of sets of misinformation out there. Okay. In the past, absolutely, you needed a lot of parallel corpora. We have worked for the last 4 or 5 years now on data manufacturing technologies that greatly reduce the need. So they look at language models, source content, many other things, and they mimic a writing style, and they manufacture translation memories, and they manufacture dictionary, glossary, phrase pairs, and so on. Right? It's driven off source and driven off target much more than it is phrase table content and parallel corpora. Parallel corpora certainly helps, but it's not the absolute requirement that it used to be.
All right. Thank you very much, Dion, again, for a very interesting take on MT and the future of translation and content development.